And she
I
was,
can't
they
do
hugged,
that.
I was hugging them.
What's the passcode?
Pink Zoo.
No, to the Zoom. I can't, the one online is not working. Oh, wait.
I have no
wait,
idea. I
this
have
is
to
the
go
problem
look.
I had the last time. Wait a second. It could be.
Do you want me to check the back door?
I unlocked
It's
it
okay.
I walked through it.
and I locked the front door.
Okay.
Does anyone mind if we have a hard stop?
No, please.
I'll ask her, but I wanted to. I took a survey. Okay, now I'll do it. No.
But do you want me to get you linked to Zoom?
No,
Hi, Rita.
Hello. Just gonna go shut my closet.
Oh, but I love the furs. Let's see. There's Tim. If you just go to counter, hit the link.
Yeah, well, no, I don't use right to that. Have no Ask me for the passcode and the passcode on the way.
Way of making this.
Hi, Tim.
Hi there. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Pretty good.
Good. Hi,
Long
Rita.
day.
Hi.
What?
I'm saying hi to everyone.
Oh,
I just need that password part. Yeah.
Problem is I have to admit people.
In your, you can look at the invitation.
That's where I'm going.
Just let me know the password, because I have to be.
It's not working. Hi, Cher. Oh, Susie, hi.
Hi, Susie.
Hi there.
Okay. So it's a 843 number you need? Seven.
It's the pass, the one that says passcode.
Okay, so
So
that doesn't
I got
show
the.
me.
Oh, no. Oh, no, go into the. Oh, wait.
You voted. I mean.
put everybody up.
That, and now just a sticker.
Okay, so now we'll turn our volume down. We're almost there.
I just thought, oh, I'll just put.
Okay, so now, in theory,
And Melody said she's not well.
I thought that was Melody. I mean, yeah, no, Mary Jo's not on.
I don't see either of them. But I think it was Melody who emailed.
Yeah, it was Melody.
We just wondered.
I have the wire.
So Melody is trying to get in, but every time I say admit, she disappears.
uh-oh.
Oh, no, she made it in.
Yep, there she is.
Good, good.
Nope,
And there's Mary Jo.
it's Mary Jo under Melody's.
I'll switch it.
Yeah.
There, look at that. I
Hi,
always think we
Mary Jo.
need some extra light. Cheryl's in the dark. We want Cheryl to be so much.
Not unusual for Cheryl to be in the dark.
All right, there.
Hello. Hi, Chris.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. for-
That's pretty good. It's 5:36.
Is it? Oh, good. All right. I'm gonna bring up the schedule on my computer here real quick. Agenda. All right, let's look over the agenda, or let's call ourselves to order first. Mike, were you gonna take minutes this time?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hey, a quick question on that before we get going then. It took quite a while for me to get the recording from the last meeting, and I've got this record button on the bottom of my screen here. Will that actually, will that make a recording of this for me so that I've got it or?
No, I'll just make sure to send it out right after the meeting, Mike.
Okay, all right, I appreciate that.
Okay. So thank you, Mike, for doing that. Shall we, this is a little bit topsy-turvy here, has review minutes first and then public comment. Does anyone have a objection to putting public comment above review minutes?
Sounds good.
Sounds good? Everybody else okay with that? Okay, so why don't we open it up to public comment? Does anyone in our, hi Chris, does anyone in our group have any public comment? Please raise your hand either on your screen or visually on the screen as well.
No comment. Goodness.
No comments? Okay, Chris, go ahead and
Unmute yourself.
unmute yourself.
You're still muted.
Unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
There
Can
we
you
go.
hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, all right. So I'm not going to be able to stay for long, it being my birthday, but I just wanted to show my support for the police department. Chief has been, as far as I'm concerned, very exceptional in her dealings with the community. And I just wanted to voice that and make sure that I was on record as my support of keeping Chief here in Shutesbury and keeping things the way they are.
Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate it.
All right, I'll hang on for a little while.
Okay, feel free. Rachel, I see your hand.
I just want to thank the committee for all of the work you all have been doing. And it's a really important topic, and the police department here in Shutesbury is critical. It's a critical, essential service. And I know it's a huge amount of work on the survey, so I'm looking forward to hearing about what changes you've made on the survey. Thank you.
Send it to everybody. Did I bring my own?
I can put it up on the screen. Yeah, I'll put it up screen. Okay, and is there anyone else for public comment before we move on? Okay, do I, shall we review the minutes from November 8th? Mike, thanks for putting these together.
I have no comments. You get a gold star from the frustrated English teacher over here.
That's awesome. Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of November 8th?
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments or edits they'd like to offer? No, okay, so not hearing any. Let's vote on approving the minutes, roll call vote. So I will try to do this, make sure I got everybody. Rita.
Carol, I.
Mike.
Linsky, aye.
Mary Jo.
Johnson, I.
Okay, Cheryl.
Hayden, aye.
Susie.
Mosier, aye.
Burgess, aye.
Makepeace O'Neill, aye. Okay, thank you. All right, so the next thing on our agenda is to review the proposed police log spreadsheet.
I've got a quick question about this. Having not seen any of the spreadsheet or anything like that, I'm not quite sure what we're going to be doing here, and I'm quite frankly not prepared for doing anything with a spreadsheet. So I'm a little confused what our goal is with this.
I did send it to everybody, Mike, but it was several weeks ago. It sort of got tabled for a while.
So in that, would anybody be opposed to doing the other two items and putting this on the next one, just so people have time to prepare and look at it more depth? How does that sound to?
Totally great.
I would prefer that.
All right, we can do that.
To the next meeting.
Yeah, we'll put that on the next meeting agenda.
Do you want me to send it out again?
That would be a good idea.
Okay.
You know, yeah, please. And so let's move on to doing our quick think thoughts on the regionalization and share truth. Let me just move to my notepad where I have those written down. So if you remember, with the other items on our glossary, we went through and did a kind of a quick pros and cons list of those items. And just what first came to mind, although we've had a little more time to think about these two, maybe off and on over the last couple weeks. So shall we start with regionalization, if you want to go alphabetically?
Can I
Yes.
ask a question
You
first?
may.
In writing these down, when I was thinking about it, I realized that some of the things that I wrote under pro were just the very opposite of things that I wrote under con.
Mhm.
Should they go in both columns, or should they just only go in one column?
It's really more of a thought process, so it can be in both.
Okay.
Yep. And then we came up with some really good ideas with the other ones where it kind of started out that way, but then there was a clear definition as we were talking. So, yeah, it's a little loosey sort of, you know, but it can be either or.
Okay.
I think anyway. Does anybody else have a different opinion? They're welcome to voice that. Yeah. Okay. So thinking about regionalization of a police department, who would like to start giving us some pros and cons?
Let's do the definition.
Oh,
first.
definition, thank you. I gotta go back to that. Real quick. Good. I'll leave that back on the screen. Hold on. Right. Okay, so regionalization definition is Town A and Town B, or a third town, merge completely into one department to cover both Town A and Town B. Financials are assessed based on a formula / percentage to be determined by a contract. So similar to, say, a regional school system. Just as a working example. All right. Okay. Who would like to, feel free to toss out some pros and cons of regionalization. Okay, Cheryl?
Actually, they're pretty much the same as for other sort of shared things. Shared resources, therefore more equipment is available and more officers available. These are pros. Lower cost by combining administrative function. More opportunity for officers to get experience and therefore hopefully leading to better retention, although it might lead them to leave to go someplace, I don't know, but. And allied with that is more opportunity for career advancement. Also, that would certainly probably lead to better retention. But there are downsides to all of these things. So there's cons. With the shared resources, isn't that already available to us with mutual aid?
If needed, yes.
If you combine administrative function, you have loss of accountability to Shutesbury. It's now sort of a shared, you have to come to agreements with the other towns as to what the accountability is. You're less likely to be able to determine the police model that is being used, the policing model, I should say, that's being used. If the police officers are shared among all the towns, they're less likely to be familiar with the Shutesbury residents. And it's possible that there would be a shorter response time, but also possible that there would be a longer response time. It depends on how many police officers are covering how much area.
If I might add one to the loss of accountability, or the act of negotiating a contract can be a struggle.
Oh, tell me about that. I was on the finance committee with Shirley when we did school regionalization.
Along with the,
Or process of, not active, process of negotiating.
yeah, and that included if you have a unionized group, it becomes this, it becomes necessary for the collective bargaining unit to be regionalized. And that can be a process that takes time and money.
I didn't even think about that.
Because right now you have one union in Leverett, a different union in Shutesbury.
I believe they do. I'm not positive, but
Yeah,
I can find that out.
I think it's a third one. Salem and Wendell didn't have one.
Well, Wendell doesn't have its own police department.
Well,
Well, that's
used to.
why.
Before.
it did a year and a half ago.
We also, this town has had a struggle working on its regional assessment. And it has a history of having difficulty with working within a group system.
But it's not hard.
A struggle is an underestimation.
I think that's true of every town.
Yeah, it's never your own.
And surely we had that struggle every single year, every year. It was really difficult.
But you were able to regionalize.
Schools, not police.
I know, but schools, you
Yeah.
couldn't regionalize schools either.
Well, we regionalized at one level. We're in a region at one level, and that's our,
Yeah, but in 1950,
yeah, well.
any regionalization attempts since then.
Since then, right.
Yeah,
Not gonna-
but that was a long time ago.
But-
Yeah, it's the same. The regionalization in Shirley for schools is the same as it is here. Elementary schools are in each town.
Seems to be the model that's accepted.
It works. It works, you know?
Okay.
I also.
Say,
wanna-
I get, one thing I want to interrupt, Cheryl, I'm having a real hard time hearing you. I don't know if you're away from a microphone or,
Not to worry, I have a loud voice.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
move the microphone, Mike. Let me know if
Melissa?
it's the fan of the laptop. Yes, Rita.
I just had a point of order. You know, I know that we had a document from, I think Susie had put something together back a while back with the pros and cons, which was from another meeting. Can we work off of that document since it was already?
This wasn't specific. This was more of going through the glossary and just doing thoughts off the top of the head, kind of.
I
just
see.
Without there, not working on it from a specific thing, although those probably will come up as we talk about it.
I think they were at the, I made a chart and I sent out the
Yeah.
chart 2 times ago, but I don't have my chart with me. Because
I do have it.
And also, and did Mike Vinsky have some on this topic?
I think Mike, you know, some of it, Susie, what you summarized was what Mike had put together. Mike had a kind of a, an all-encompassing list, and I think my impression was that this was a distillation of those pros and cons.
Mine wasn't.
So,
Mine wasn't
no.
a distillation, it was my list. Yeah.
Okay, yours alone. Okay,
I
But
do
Mike-
have mine. I don't know. I don't know how we want to proceed. I've got a copy of Susie's, and I have mine, so I'm not sure how we want to go about this.
Well, my impression of yours, Mike, was that it was very comprehensive, but some of the things in your list were really like subheadings of other things in your lists. As opposed to.
I'm sorry, they were what? Subcategories of what?
Of other things in your list. So that there were some were somewhat redundant.
Well, we just have to look at them. It's not.
Yeah, never
Do
mind.
we want to screen share them?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll look for Susie's. Do you have mine? But you're a co-host, Melissa.
Okay, hang on a second.
Becky, it's hard to hear you also.
We're just looking for,
We're just trying to sort out who does what.
Okay.
Melissa's looking.
I'm gonna look for yours, Mike.
Mike's, and I'm gonna look for Susie's.
Rick, while you're looking, can I ask a question?
Go ahead. T.
I apologize. The woman who was talking about the pros and cons, I don't see your name on the screen and I don't remember your name. But you said that there would be more personnel in a regionalized approach. Can you give a concrete example of, for example, how many police are in Shutesbury now and in Leverett, and how that number would increase if those 2 towns were put together?
I didn't say it clearly because I didn't mean that altogether there would be more police, just that for Shutesbury, there would be more police available if you could call from the police over all of the regionalized area.
But isn't that the same now that we have agreements with these towns?
I think it is, yes.
Did you find
Okay.
out?
Thank you.
So also then maybe while the search is going on, I was thinking that it might be a useful use of this exercise to have someone after we
You did
finish
just send
it.
Susie's, but I've already brought it up.
Somebody's just turned
It
on.
was me,
Oh, okay. Maybe after I was thinking maybe after we finish this exercise, someone could collate all of the responses and we could attach it as an appendix for our report. Or that we're doing for the select board.
That's the hope.
Is that the plan? Yeah.
And a quick question then is, who is gonna collate all this?
I don't mind doing that. I've been taking thorough notes and in a way that looks like something I could type up. But I don't mind doing that.
All right,
Since it was my idea. You just have to increase
Yeah.
that. You might wanna,
Okay.
can everybody see that?
It's kind of small.
Working on it.
You just
Mary
slide it
Jo,
down
up
at
in the
bottom.
upper top of your screen, if you highlight where it says the screen's being shared, it allows you to change your ratio on your screen. Where it says view options, on the top of the screen, it says
Oh,
your
okay, thank you.
view options, and right there, it allows you to adjust the size.
Great. That is very helpful.
Because it's your screen.
Or can you just go down to the 100% down at the bottom? Very bottom of the slide.
See the bottom right, yep, keep going right there and slide it up.
Good job.
Because we can
Oh,
scroll.
too
Why don't you fill your screen?
It's good. All right. Let me see what we're on.
Oh, we're missing A now. A, you need to have A.
We'll get there, she's working on
Oh,
It's
it. There you go. Is that view a little better for everybody?
Is it big enough?
Keep going.
Yeah.
Close up all your screen. Okay, there's Susie's. I haven't found Mike's yet, but,
How about you? I'll look for Mike's and you can.
okay. Okay, so, here's what Susie put together for her thoughts.
I'm go to regional, just down farther.
Regionalization is down further.
Yeah.
So scroll down, please. Good practice
we
with
didn't
that.
do regionalization the last time.
No, I know, but Susie looks like she is.
There it
down
is.
further.
Oh,
Okay, so there is regionalization. So this is some thoughts that Susie, thank you, Susie, for putting together. I know Mike has done a similar thing. So one administrative for multiple towns and pros, special duties that could assign to one officer, training for universal for officers, bigger pool to cover sick and holiday hours. Some cons are chief would be administrative instead of patrol. Salaries would rise to region's highest level. Political agreement with greater number of stakeholders. Legal agreements, greater geographical area per shift, greater constituencies to know, multiple facilities, volunteer oversight board. The one thing I would add to the multiple facilities is maybe end up with one facility. You know, and you have to go through those negotiations.
So in the Novak study, the South County Police study, they had mentioned multiple places. And I think that's somewhat for parking vehicles and they seem to feel that this was a hard to iron out and the legal agreements. So I was thinking about in our school region, the leaving or staying is a process. And so then I wondered how stable this model would be. The legal agreement would have to make it stable. You wouldn't go through all this work and then have people just get ticked off and leave. So the legal agreement would have to include efforts to make it stable.
Okay. Anybody else have any pros and cons they'd like to share?
I just want
I
to,
Mary Jo, go ahead.
So I read a little bit online about regionalization. And I got the impression that frequently when towns do decide to do this, or cities and towns do this together, the reason why they go through all of the administrative hassle of putting it together is because there's some sort of regional crime problem that's getting out of control that can't be managed by the local police departments. So for example, if you've got crime in a city that's kind of spilling over into the suburbs, and the suburbs don't have a lot of financial wherewithal or training their police department to deal with that. And I read a report from a couple of towns in Allegheny County that had actually done this. And they gave as the reasons why they would want to do this is that they wanted uniform and consistent enforcement. That was their number one. And it seemed to me as though the flavor of it was not really around community policing, in the sense that it wasn't about preventative. It wasn't about connecting with citizens. It was a lot more about dealing with a crime problem. So it's kind of like not as preventative, but more problem focused. So they were talking about enforcement first. Coordination of services was also really important to them, like, and also shared records, so that there was a kind of a consistent approach and response across the whole region. Personnel distribution and deployment advantages. So, you know, having more personnel that you could send more quickly wherever they needed to go at any given point in time. Training efficiency and specialization was something else that they mentioned. And also management and supervision were shared. So they didn't need they had some good managers, and it was like all kind of across the board consistent. What the stumbling blocks were and what they felt was difficult was that people perceived a number of losses. The loss of of local services, the loss of local control, the loss of citizen contact that was, you know, because of, again, what it seemed like more of a criminal focus as opposed to a community focus. And then also the loss of personnel rank. So, you know, whoever was a chief of police in one town would obviously not necessarily be the chief of police in the region. So that's basically what I got when I looked online.
Thank you, very good. Kristen, here.
Yes, so I just wanted to, I believe these were touched on, but to just put a little bit more into it. I think it was Cheryl said the town has to accept the policing model that other departments have. And that is going to be a con in my mind, because each town has a lot of times their very own unique perspective of what they have received from their department and what they want to continue to receive from their department. So when you're taking on a regionalization or any sort of shared anything, you're going to have a leader. Is that the leader, the chief? Is that the leader that every town wants? And how do you choose that? That's going to be a lengthier process to choose a new chief or a new leader for the department, because now you're going to have multiple towns weighing in on their opinions of who they want to lead. And a con also is in regionalizing, sorry, it's been a very long day. In regionalizing, you may potentially have already chiefs in positions of other towns. What happens with them? How do you let go of them if you let go of them? Or what is going to happen with them? You have to make those decisions now as well. And one more point is that in my experience, particularly in this field, but also in many areas, in many different fields, people choose who they want to work for. So if they do not want to work for the leader, the chief that all of the region has decided, you might lose officers that you're thinking that you're going to have. And I would say almost you would lose officers. So you would have to work on restructuring and rehiring to make sure that it is I think Susie said, a stable environment. So those are my pros, cons.
I can't find Mike's list in my email.
He has it.
Oh, you have it, Mike? We can put it.
Can you put it on the screen if I make you
I'm sorry, what was that?
Would you be able to put your document on the screen if Becky made you a co-host?
So Ken,
While you're doing that, Michael, Tim,
I wanted to ask about the ownership, acquisition, and maintenance of equipment, anything from patrol vehicles to radios, et cetera. How would that go on the pros and cons for regionalization? Thank you.
those would probably be a contractual thing that you would have in a contract. It's my guess, you know, you'd figure out the shared cost of those things. Right? That sounds reasonable. Models. Does that answer your question, Kim? But it's something to put down questions, you know, not a core comp, but definitely a question.
I suspect it would involve some fairly complicated negotiations and a possible frequent cause for disputes. So my thought would be that that question should be looked at fairly closely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mike.
I just, before we get into this, I wanted to go back to what Mary Jo said quickly and the research that she did on regionalization. And I'm not, I'm not sure where Allegheny County is or anything like that, but it seems to be it's a larger or a city type environment that
It's not.
No, I think it's Western Pennsylvania.
It's fairly rural Pennsylvania, but it includes some cities that do have a crime problem. I'm from Pennsylvania, by the way. That do have a crime problem such as Scranton.
okay. So you know, I understand that, and maybe, you know, I'm looking at regionalization, kind of modeling it after our regional school system, and you know, it seems to be working for the school system, and maybe, you know, maybe it's too much of a leap to compare a school system with a police department or multiple police departments, but I kind of look at why have we regionalized with Amherst, Pelham, and Leverett, and trying to apply those same reasons to doing it with the police department. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with you know, the pros and cons that I came up with. And there's a list. I don't think I necessarily have to go through it unless anyone has a question about anything.
Let's give people a minute to look through it if they have it on their screen. Susie, can you see that? Okay, yeah, I see it here. And then ask questions.
Yes, I have some questions, Mike.
Go ahead.
On number 5, if you would, more consistent training standards. I think I need to understand where your thought is on why we don't have consistent training standards now.
From town to town.
So I'll just explain this. We are all required through the Massachusetts Police Training Commission to have the same trainings in the Commonwealth. As far as in-services and standards for every department, more so now with the reform bill, are we all compelled to have the exact same training? So I'm not sure if you were thinking of something else. I'm just not sure what that was.
I was thinking more along the lines of continuation training or annual refresher training or things of that nature where, you know, you, Kristen, might go out with the officers and conduct a training session, you know, on your own, so to speak. If you have multiple towns doing that, then if they're all regionalized under one umbrella, then that sort of training would be more standardized. That's what my thinking was on that.
Okay, yeah, I can see where you would come up with that. So the next one is 8, more exposure to others officers' experience. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I was thinking with a larger department, you've got the ability for the officers to to discuss situations with other officers, different situations that they've been in, that they've had experience with, and you get a ability to secondhand type experience with different environments and things like that. So just instead of having two people in a department that talk to each other, you have more people that you can say, this was a situation, this is what I did, what do you think about that? So you have the ability to discuss those sorts of things amongst a larger group of people.
Yeah, just so you know, we do that now. All the officers in the county, they do get together and they do discuss the different calls that they're on. We have mutual aid, as you know, so especially if an officer is on a mutual aid call, but this does happen frequently. Officers meet up, we call it a meetup, and they talk about different calls that they've had. We have the ability through IMC to see all the different calls, and officers often will talk to each other about these calls and how they handled it. And we as chiefs in the area do definitely encourage that behavior. So that does happen frequently right now. Less potential for uncomfortable work environment. I'm not sure what that means.
Again, that's with when you have a small work environment with only a couple of people. If you happen not to get along with the other person, that makes it a little bit uncomfortable. But if there's a larger group of people that you could possibly be working with, then maybe that would lessen the discomfort of not getting along with somebody.
Oh, okay, I understand. Speaking from someone who's been in small departments, there's no time for not getting along. You have to get along. But that makes sense to me now. 10. More standardized operating guidelines. So can you tell me where it's not standardized?
No, not necessarily, but it just, I think our operating policy guidelines or something is like 700 pages long. So if you've got each town that's got a document that's big, then if you regionalize that, it turns into one document. And my thinking is that with one document, it would be a little bit more standardized than having 5 or 6 of them.
We're on our way to that through the reform bill. Post is standardizing a lot of policies at this time. And the policies come from accredited organizations, accredited police departments, and therefore they're passed down, and they all, like the use of force, for instance, that is standard now in policy. Dealing with juveniles, mental health, these are all standardized policies. They're on their way to creating that across the board already. So that's going to be something for the future. Oh, and the present. Susie's got her hand up.
Oh, I'm
Do
sorry.
you have more? I do.
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry, I just want to make sure I understand all of them. Easier to surge manpower if required. You mean, first of all, can we just change that to surge person power?
Mhm.
Sure.
Thank you. And meaning, I'm sorry, why don't you just tell me the meaning of that, because I don't want to guess.
Well, if you have, say you have a festival coming up or something like that, and you want to have a few more people on duty, when you have a regionalized force, I would think it would be relatively larger than individual towns. Then you have more personnel to draw from.
Okay, 18. Multiple officers on one shift provides ready backup. I just wanted to make a quick comment to that we do have mutual aid, and all of the officers in Franklin County and beyond actually are ready to back us up in the mutual aid agreement at any time. In fact, we just assisted New Salem on a very serious call just yesterday. And then 19, please, and that's my last one, I promise. Less costly to comply with state reform bill. How would it be less costly?
Again, when you're looking at having to comply with state reform requirements, if you can do that with a larger group of people, it would just seem to make sense that you could do that less expensively than if you have to do it with individual individual groups on a town by town basis. It just seems if everybody's in the same room at the same time, that it's going to be less expensive to get the information out and to comply.
I'm going to disagree with you. Also, I think that if we don't know what the state reform bill is going to require, we can't have it as a pro or a con. I'm happy to explain that. It's probably going to take way more than we have in time today, but more people, more cost. And it doesn't cost anything to send out emails, but it costs to have your people trained. It costs for salary. I'll tell you that the reform bill post costs of educating right now, it's going to cost mostly in salaries. So it's going to actually cost more. The more people you have, the more costly it will be.
I think this is just my thought thinking about this. I think this is where the model differentiates separately from the school. Because if you have a regionalized police department, it's really one police department for both towns. It's not assessed by the number of officers you have or anything like that. So I think that's where this would differ from a school, where it's assessed by pupil or enrollment. It would be one department, 2 towns paying for.
Right. Well, it would probably be assessed according to population rather than number of police.
No, I think the services would be equal across both towns. I don't think you could. In a contracted one, yes, that would be probably the case in a contracted. But in regional, you're asking for the services to be provided equally across the entire region, you know.
But if one town had either more area or a lot more people in it, you would expect that there would be more police work. And so,
Potentially. Yeah, but
and so I would think that your contract would take that into consideration.
true, but I don't know that it would be as
It's not as
applicable as the
obvious.
school, right?
It's not
As a
as
school,
obvious
it would be a
as-
little more,
Yeah.
I figured be a little more equal.
I mean, one town might have the best people that live there that never do anything wrong, and the other one's full of criminals, but we can't assume that.
I just want to add too, with the state reform bill and cost. So here's a con for this list. So as we move into a new reform of police and with the post system, there will not be any more part-time trained officers. There will only be allowed to have full-time trained officers, no matter what capacity they're going to be working in. If they want to work part-time, they still must be full-time trained officers. Now, as we move forward in that, we are now going to be finding less and less people to work for departments, and that means it's going to cost more to send people to academies to get them trained. This Bridge Academy is only going to be lasting us a very short while, and when that is up, if you do not have anyone that wants to work for your town in a part-time capacity, you are going to have to send people to academies. So it's going to be extremely costly.
And that's salary and tuition for that. That's not just.
That's
salary.
right, salary and tuition and uniform and tools.
So somebody who, until this reform bill came through or is come through, whatever, somebody who was trained as a part-time police officer would be paid less than somebody who's trained as a full-time, regardless of hours for either of them?
On a different pay scale.
Well,
Not necessarily.
right, potentially, but
not.
not, it depends on the towns. That's something else too we could put on there for an idea that pay scale may change significantly for officers I know that we in the town of Shutesbury are different than other towns in the area. This could be a very significant, some towns might pay their officers a lot more. So that's going to be a significant change in salary perhaps. But to your question, it depends on the department and the town.
Okay, so each
some-
town makes up its own mind about that.
Correct, yes.
At this point, we negotiate our own contract.
Oh, and we lose the negotiation of our own contracts.
So I have a couple of points about regionalization. In Allegheny, Pennsylvania, it sounds like it's covering a bigger population. I would guess that it's about bigger populations. The Novex study was about 3 towns that are all bigger than Shutesbury. And I wonder if the regional benefits don't become real until you have a big enough area to draw on. In a school, you're bringing all those kids to one place and all the services are delivered in one. In a police department, the services are delivered over the whole geographical area. And that seems to me to present something different than how regional schools work. And so I just see, it seems to me that regionalization is for a bigger area than Shutesbury and one other town, or even Shutesbury and multiple other little towns. The geography starts to become defeating.
Mhm.
Well, I have to say geography is really defeating in Allegheny County too. But I think it's hard to know really what they're talking about in Allegheny County when they talk about towns getting together with cities. Because a town in Allegheny County or in Pennsylvania doesn't mean the whole area of the town. That's the township. The town is just what we would call a village here. So it's hard to compare them.
Okay. Anyone else? Can I see your hand again?
Thank you. Let me make sure I'm not muted. I was going to suggest that one of the considerations, probably in the con column, is that our towns depend on volunteers and very heavily on the extensive capabilities of the town administrators. If we have one more type of contract and issues, et cetera, that have to be negotiated with another town, will that put a even additional burden on the town administrator? And will it require us to have even more volunteers in the town to deal with those negotiations and to help keep the agreements in line and any disputes that come up? I think the volunteer work involved and the additional work on non-police people would be something that might well be viewed as probably in the con column. Thank you.
I don't, when the schools were regionalized here, did you all put together a committee that did that consisted of like the town administrator and 1 or 2 select board? And that's the way we did it in Shirley.
We did that during the regionalization
Yeah.
3-year effort that failed
Ah,
in the 2000s,
That was more.
2000,
grades.
early 2000s.
Yeah, that had multiple reps from school
Yeah.
committee. Yeah.
well, yeah, there was school
committee,
committee.
there was,
finance
yeah.
committee, select board, and,
Still does. When we go to the assessment, it still
yeah,
does.
and we're still
But,
working.
well, Tim's point is well made. I assume that you get paid at least some token amount of money, but the other people that would be on that board, even though they're elected, probably aren't being paid anything or very little.
So you're using your volunteer resources.
Yes, exactly.
as
But you're
well as-
placing a greater demand on the volunteers, and I think we only have a limited amount of volunteers in this town.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
So
agree.
you don't really want to stress the volunteer base too much.
I'm hopeful there's new volunteers every day. We've had a few. You're right,
Okay.
valuable
Oh,
resource.
sorry. They are valuable resources, and we don't want to burn them out.
That
Um,
happens.
It does.
That
happen.
happens.
I know.
I mean,
It's
after 7
happening.
years
It's
on a
happening.
finance committee, they said, won't you stay? And I said,
No.
no.
It's happening, and we recycle. So let's move on to shared chief, some pros and cons in that piece. Does anyone want to start with ones that they have thought of, pros or cons, just label which one? You can bring those lists back up.
Back up,
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
then Mike.
And then Mike will have you put yours back up.
I'll just chime
Mary
in.
Jo, Mary Jo first,
Go
and
ahead.
then Cheryl. Go ahead, Mary Jo.
Okay. So I really couldn't think of a lot of pros for shared chief other than the cost savings. And maybe it would be if it was difficult to hire a chief, because you couldn't recruit one. My concerns about having a shared chief would be that the job of police chief would be more heavy on administration, training, supervision, and recruitment, and less citizen contact. And I think in a town the size of Shutesbury, with the amount of money that we pay, we tend to have a lot of officer turnover. And when you have a lot of officer turnover, recruitment, supervision, training, and administration take even more time. So then the chief is probably the best trained person that you've hired. And then that person having less citizen contact, I think would be a con in terms of the perception of the police department and the quality of service that people were receiving.
Okay.
Those were exactly the things that I was going to say.
Okay, good. Look at that. We're on the same page. And I see Susie says 2 towns paying for services, and a lot of what Mary Jo just said there as well.
Yeah,
2
who would
sets of
want this
equipment.
job?
Who would want this job? And if the chief turns over, it's kind of all hell breaks loose.
Well, yeah, then you've got 2
Yeah.
different towns trying to find one person who's going to meet everybody's needs.
Yeah, and
That's the
select
problem.
boards figuring that out. Or more, if there's more than 2. Someone else had their hand.
And
No,
Mike can put
yes.
up the share.
Yeah, Rita, go ahead, Mike,
Yeah.
put yours up too, please. If you don't mind.
I would just say that with sharing a chief, there is the potential for paying a higher salary. So maybe that you both attract a really high caliber person, but they're also willing to stay longer, because I think part of the problem, at least with some of our police officers, is that they get trained and then other communities pay more. So there is that that problem, and I hope we certainly don't hope we have it with Kristen, but that people move on because they move up. If you do have 2 towns paying in, or 2 towns joined together, you might pay somebody more money.
I plan on going nowhere if you'll keep me, very clearly. Just, yes, so I think that I was going to say for the pros and cons, this sort of depends. It's dependent upon multiple variables, but one in particular, are you the town that started with your chief and you're sharing your chief with another department? Are you starting fresh with a whole new chief? So these are things. And I think that it can move both ways, retention of officers. If you start with police officers that have sought out a small town feel, to only then now give them more area of coverage, more responsibility, maybe that's not what they're looking for. And we do have those unicorns, we certainly do. And that they might not be interested in a larger field. So I think it's sort of, it could be both ways, depending on the personality of who you have. I'm going to go back to saying that you have now a larger catchment area of people that are going to have to agree on their chief. And it is a lot more coverage that you're going to need.
I would just like to ask you, Kristen, suppose this town were to decide to do that, would you be interested in staying on as chief?
So if I was the chief that took on another town,
Yeah.
it would depend on the town, first of all. And then I believe that that is something that is, so I was going to add that if it was another town in similar to size, or are we talking another town that is much larger? So these are all variables. But for me, myself, very frankly, if you said, Kristen, we'd like you to take on another town and it's similar in what they're looking for and what I would give, and the agreement is there that my style is what's looking for, absolutely 100% yes for me. And I would want the blessing of the people that are currently there as well. That's important. So, but all the challenges that we're stating are challenges for sure.
And I think one of those challenges would be the chief would have 2 select boards to
Report to, yeah.
be friendly with and support and, yeah.
Well, it's certainly pretty easy here.
But also we talked about it would be more administration and less patrol.
It
And
is.
so
Same thing.
the chief would have to be a person who wants to do more administration and would be willing to do less patrol, and the towns would have to say how that affects them. They would have to chime in on that.
Or they would have to come up with some more money to have an administrative assistant.
Exactly, that's what I was going to say. You would need an administrative assistant in each town just to keep the paperwork under control.
And to help navigate the 2 select boards.
I have a question about Cheryl's question to Kristen. I'm trying to keep this framed in the charge that the committee has, and I'm just, Cheryl, I'm not quite sure what you were driving at with that question. What were you trying to find out?
I wanted to know whether Kristen would feel that that would negate what she thinks of the good things of her job. That's all.
I'm still not sure it would, you want to find out if it would negate how she feels about her job?
Whether it would, negate's not the right word, whether it would weigh too heavily against the good things, the things that she really likes about being the acting chief of Shutesbury.
I think it was just an opinion thing. I think it was just thrown out there.
Yeah, we've talked about a lot of things that would make, not a lot, some things that would make the chief's job harder. And I mean, I think we all know by now that Kristen really likes the job she has here. And I just wanted to know whether that would make her think differently about her job, that's all.
Okay, thanks.
Mike, Rachel has her question, but do you want to share your list of the shared chiefs since we shared Susie?
Sure.
Rachel, while he's pulling it up, did you have comment?
Rachel's muted.
So I just wanted to say, and I said this last time, but it's so important that I feel I need to say it again. I'm sure that if Kristen was hired and we had to have a shared police chief, she would do an amazing job and work unbelievably hard and long hours. I have absolute faith in that. But I want to share my experience of being in a regional school district where we had a shared elementary principal, and literally that person was running back and forth from crisis to crisis. And this was a small rural school district with not a lot of crime or what have you. very similar actually to Shutesbury. So I have real concerns about that, and wearing out a shared police chief and possibly losing the police chief because of that. So I just, and again, I'm not saying that Kristen couldn't and wouldn't do it. She's an amazing acting chief, and if anyone could do that position, she could. But I just wanted to share that as a cautionary tale. And, you know, after 24 years in one regional school district, I worked in a couple of other school districts as well, and I had shared principals. It was the same exact story. So you know, you can't always say that a school system is like a police department, and that was brought up earlier in this meeting. You know, regional school district. Do we want a regional police department? You can't compare apples and kiwis. Okay, they are completely different animals, police departments and school systems. But I worry about, you know, what that would mean for a shared police chief. Anyway, I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
I just, it just jogged a thought in my head. Currently for the Shutesbury, town of Shutesbury, I am on call 24/7. I could be called in for a critical incident or a less critical incident. So it could be that if that is what is asked or required of a police chief that is now sharing two departments, that increases the amount of calls that potentially that chief could end up being called into. So that should be said as well.
And here's the thing also,
Yeah.
Here's the thing also, that as we're thinking about this would be one chief with two different departments. It's not
Right.
like a regional where you have one department.
Right.
So
No, that's true.
So
And
there's
that's complicated.
two complete philosophies and to adhere to, so that one person would have to
Yeah.
navigate to policing philosophies that could be different.
Right, that's up there.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Is the scheduling up there because now you're scheduling two different departments?
Yeah, everything is
Autonomously of itself?
double.
Okay,
But it's referring to streamline.
yes, okay. Where is that? What line?
4
Forward.
on the
Okay.
pros. But the different
So
philosophies.
one
is what
person
I'll let
could
us-
streamline.
I don't think the administrative chores would be
Schedule.
streamlined.
No, it would be under regionalization more than shared.
Yeah, I think the administrative chores would be doubled.
Yeah, double.
They would be.
Yeah.
Mike, what do you think? On
What's
number,
that?
Number 4, Mike,
Yeah.
Becky's asking what you think about that in regards to,
scheduling police officers, because a lot of the administrative tasks like the payroll are double. They're not really streamlined. Because they might even have different payroll systems in each town.
I was thinking more along the lines of what a what a chief does as far as the policing. I guess the policing administrative actions are concerned. It's they're basically those activities as opposed to payroll and everything else would be the same for both towns. And that's what I'm looking at with this one, is that as far as policing, straight on policing is concerned, making sure that the officers are performing the way that they need to be performing. It would be the same for both towns, and that would be streamlined. That's what I was going with on that one.
I don't think that's administrative chores.
And I think that shared chief, Mike, is two different departments, but I'm sorry, shared chief is you have two different departments, but one leader. And so they're doing technically two different jobs.
so you have a whole department with their staff and another department with their staff. You have policies with this staff, policies with this staff. So all the things we talked about for regionalization, I feel like this one's good for regionalization. But be more work for a chief
In a share.
in a shared. I think that's a good one for regionalization.
So maybe I'm not clear on this. My understanding of a shared chief is that, the chief is providing the leadership for two, two groups of officers. So at some point, there's going to be some efficiency of scale there, or lack of duplication or whatever. I mean, my impression is it's not that you've got one town who's got is doing community policing, and the other town is doing non-community policing, and the chief is trying to coordinate both those. My idea is that you got two groups of people, but the one leadership is coming from the one shared chief.
Okay, I was taking that as administrative chores being payroll. My payroll is different than Joe Camden's payroll. I was thinking of billing. My billing would be a little different than his. I would think that I would have to submit vendor warrants for one town, vendor warrants for another town. So there, and it's done differently. The way that I submit them here might not be appreciated in another town that way. That's what I was thinking you meant.
It's fine.
I think I know it's.
And the other thing is that when it says town A and town B maintain independent police departments, that also comes from the select board and their choices. I think that's a sort of a flow chart issue. The town defines some parameters of the services, and then the chief has to carry those out. So it could be two different town philosophies.
Is that necessarily true? I mean, my impression is with a strong chief, the strong chief is basically, setting the standard for what policing in that community is going to be. So.
Won't last long.
So Mike, I think that in this case, it's not merging the two towns in any way. It's the two different departments. And the only thing the two towns would be doing is paying the chief's salary, the chief training, maybe the chief's equipment, that sort of thing. But everything else is still separate.
It's basically each town gets a half-time chief.
Yeah. One person and two.
The one place the administrative chores would be streamlined is like when you were writing policies and updating all the policies.
Yes.
You could
Could be
just
the
roll
same,
those out for the other town. Writing a grant for
As-
body cams,
You
you could
duplicate it.
apply in both towns. So grant, there could be some areas that you could just duplicate.
Yes, yes.
Those policies are the ones that come from the state.
Yeah, so they would be.
And so there's a difference between policies and goals. And I would say that the select board still has input into what even when they interview, you can hear they're asking for something, and then that has to be maintained for each town, those goals.
And I understand the point about a strong chief, but it's in cooperation and working for the town. I don't go myself, I'll speak for myself. I don't make decisions based on what I want. I make decisions based on the needs of the town and the advisement of the town. The select board represents the town. So I don't just say, I'm going to do this because I want to. It's a cooperative event.
Rita and Tim, Rita, I see your hand.
Yeah. I take some issue with some of the comments because I think in an agreement between two communities, whether it's regionalization or a shared chief, that you state sort of that you wouldn't go into a shared chief or regionalization unless there was a similar philosophy and approach, because it's never going to work if two communities are so so different, both in geography and population size, that you would only do this if there were significant commonalities between the two communities. So I don't think it's impossible to do. I don't think it's easy to do, but I think we're sort of putting up a whole lot of barriers and saying it couldn't work, when in fact, there might be a community that that we could work with. So it's just, because, having been a shared town administrator many years ago for 4 towns, I understand the difficulties. I worked for 4 boards of selectmen at the time. But there were some positives from that. And it doesn't necessarily carry over to this, but I think we're talking about a lot of negatives when there could, in fact, be some positives.
Tim and then Rachel.
My question is directed. My question is directed to Melissa.
Yeah.
At some time in this process, is there going to be at least some attempt to quantify things in terms of cost benefit?
Yes,
For
yes,
example,
there's a budget part, and then there'll be some analysis based on some of these, yeah.
Because if you wind up making a statement like, well, we're going to have a shared chief, but the salary is going to have to go up 30,000 in order to keep that person from the chances of having employee turnover in that type of a job where they're dealing with 2 select boards, I think the chances of turnover is higher unless you pay a really motivating salary. So, when you sort all this stuff out and you come up with a figure and say, okay, it's going to save me whatever number, let's say $10,000. Are we going to, in this group, look at what you're losing for that gain of $10,000? You're losing community policing, you're losing, I hear these pros and cons, but when you feed that into a funnel and say, well, how much am I saving and what am I really losing to get that savings? I'm hoping that kind of question will occur in this group. And I also I was going to say pretty much what Rita was going to say, that there could be benefits, but I'm more concerned about the negatives myself, but thank you.
Yeah, Tim, we'll do cost analysis too. Currently of what we have, and then any of the options that we might decide are toward the top of anything we might recommend.
Thank you.
Kristen and then Rachel.
And
I think a huge pro for this is that the same officers patrolling the same town. So keeping autonomy, I think that is a huge pro. I think that there is something to be said for the same officers patrolling the same area consistently. That is, speaks to community policing and really being highly visible for people. The townspeople will then get to know those officers. So I think that's a huge pro.
You mean as compared to regionalization? Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying in this particular shared chief option, if a shared chief is considered, I like this because the autonomy is there. So number 6, I agree, huge pro for me.
Okay, Rachel and then Becky.
Hi, so thank you for, giving me a chance to share again. I'm very concerned about the loss of a chief who can concentrate on community policing for just our town. Tim took the words right out of my mouth. Again, I don't want to compare apples and oranges, but it is a fact that in the several districts that I worked in where we had a shared school principal, there was a high turnover and a high level of burnout. Kristen just told me something I didn't know. She's on duty 24/7 for emergency calls or, severe emergency situations. I didn't even know that. And I mean, that is comparable to my principal being walkie-talkied, back and forth and having to drive a half an hour to another regional school far away, and then I lost him as a school counselor, and then a lot of times I'd have to call him back because we had something, in our school. So that is a concern that I have. And so I'd really like to see that is listed on the cons side. And in terms of a possible high turnover rate of a shared chief and burning out a shared chief. And the pro side of that is the opposite, is a chief who can focus on the community policing needs of our town, our residents, and our families, and provide resources. That's what community policing is all about. At least it is my understanding of what our town is doing. Thank you so much.
Becky, and then Mary Jo.
Mike, I just wanted you to follow up on number 7 on the pros, cost savings possible. I was just wondering what cost savings you see.
Well, basically, if you have 2 towns and you have 2 chiefs, you're paying 2 chief salaries. If you have 2 towns with a shared chief, you're paying 1 salary. There's talked about, well, you're going to have to pay that 1 chief a lot of extra money in order to get them to take the job. May or may not be true. We don't know until to investigate that more.
Well, I think you have a situation actually where the chief would negotiate salary in each individual town independently if
Depends on
they're
how
both on
it's-
top of it.
Depends on
Right,
how it's set
but
up,
it is a
that's-
situation where that would occur.
Yeah.
Either it's 1 salary shared by 2 towns, or it's 2 salaries paid to the chief.
Then
I don't know
you
that's a pro and
essentially,
con, but that's just a.
then you essentially have a half-time chief in each town.
Okay, and then Mary Jo.
Sorry, real quick question. Are we assuming that each town is going to require the exact same thing from their chief?
No.
Okay, because some towns might say, I only need the chief there for this amount of time. And another town might say, we want the chief 24/7. So I think that, if they're going to require more, they're going to be paying more. If they're going to be requiring less, then it would be, I was just curious. Sorry.
What was the answer to that question? Is it same, or is it variable? I missed the answer.
I asked if we were assuming that each town was going to be requiring the same thing from the shared chief. And the answer was no, we're not assuming that.
Any particular reason why
Just like what you just said, we don't know. We can't surmise that until we research it further.
Okay.
It would be something you go into a negotiation with another town with the shared, or the chief negotiates independently with each town for those things. Right? Yeah. Mary Jo.
So just speaking from a human resources perspective, in terms of the big picture, what you're really saying when you're talking about a shared chief would be that Shutesbury does not need a full-time police chief. That Shutesbury could do with a part-time, either half-time, or if the other town didn't need that much service, maybe a 3/4 time chief. But either way, you're saying that Shutesbury does not need a full-time police chief. So to make that decision, I think it's important to take a look at what the actual job description of the police chief is. So I'm not saying like we wouldn't necessarily know what would all be involved in that, but I would think an important thing to consider is, what is the police chief's job description? And, is that a full-time job description for our town? And do you want to change that?
And then we also talked about administrative assistant for tasks. So it could be that the chief's job would shift in description if the administration was changed into a separate position, or part of it was some tasks or in a separate position.
So there could be additional help needed as a administrative person.
Listed, I think.
I'm just writing it on my list.
Mhm.
Make sure I put it on there. Okay. Anybody, Mike?
Yep. Yeah, so, this discussion, and I've mentioned this before with this exercise, is that we're trying to come up with pros and cons for several different policing models that we really don't know what we're talking about. And these questions that we've had in the last few minutes is like, it certainly shows that that until you've got a proposal or a plan or something like that in your hand, that you really can't evaluate the pros and cons of it. So, I'm as far as this committee is concerned, I would think that we need to find the towns that are operating under these various policing models and either have them join a meeting and talk to us and tell us what their how their model works, what they found is useful, what's being problematic and things. And then after that, we've got a better understanding of how that might apply to Shutesbury. But right now, we're just pulling stuff out of the air and making assumptions and coming up with theories that may or may not ever materialize. So I really think we need to get some input from towns that are actually using these different models, and then we can go from there.
And it is a step on our list, on our chart. So anybody else have anything after this? I will type these up so we can have them in front of us as we go through our discussions. Are we ready to move on to the next item, which is the survey update? And then communication and feedback with the public. Okay. Cheryl, would you like to give us some updates on the
Okay, I need to look at one. Have you not brought one?
There you go.
Thank you. Okay, after last week's very helpful discussions, Mary Jo, Melody, and I met again by Zoom on Friday and completely reorganized the survey. The reason why it says survey draft number 3 is because I went through and made the changes that I understood from the discussions, and then we worked from that. And this is what came out of our discussions anyway. So,
Can we go one by one?
well, first of all,
Not yet.
we need to talk about why it's rearranged, why it's arranged now the way it is. Because our discussion, Mary Jo, please chime in.
Well,
If
could
you-
we share a screen? It'd be nice if we could all see what we're talking about.
It's coming.
Are you doing it?
I'm not finding it easily, so. I'm gonna say
In
no.
our discussion, we decided that we should not be asking the people in the town what kind of police model they want. We should be asking the people in the town what they want from their police department. And then it would be up to the administrators in the town to provide a police department that would give the people what they want. So that's how we came up with these questions and why we ordered them the way we did. So the first question is just the basic question, asking what services people in this town would like to have, and asking them to scale the services rather than just yes or no, because that way we can, if we get enough responses, we can order all of those services by what people think are more important or less important. And basically, we're asking about response to emergency calls, a visible police presence, traffic control, is that better? wording?
So much better.
Preventive patrol, we had proactive, but I think people understand more what preventive is than proactive. Provision of referral, now this we added after a discussion, provision of referrals to or advice on social services available to Massachusetts residents. And if anybody thinks there's other things we should add to this, we'd be glad to hear them. Anybody?
I'm here.
Over here.
I'm over
Okay,
here.
go ahead.
If we could add, I was thinking about this as I was reading it and referring to the old list as well. You know, I remember Walter, Chief Tibbetts had said, you know, there's so much more we do. I think if we add, there's two things I would love to see added if everyone agreed on this, of course. But we do quite a bit of investigative work, so investigations. And I would
Excellent,
also
okay.
like to see response to complaints. So I just today received 3 phone calls for 3 different complaint events that people needed me to respond to. So if that could be added, and I really just think that the wording of provision of referrals to or advice on social services available to Massachusetts residents is too much. I think that what you're getting at is, again, should we provide referral services for social service events? And what we're talking about is any sort of services in regards to social events, mental health, et cetera. And it is very too broad. It is very too wide of a subject to condense into referrals of social services. When we say social services, the layman will think that a social worker. And are we now trying to take the place of a social worker? And no. So I think this question in here is very too broad. And right now, the way it's worded is very too confusing. I had to stop and read it 3 times myself. Provision of referrals to or advice on, and we don't give advice on these things. We give
Take out advice.
referrals. We do what is necessary to abide by the law if necessary. And then what we do is refer to the proper support group, or we call that group and refer it the opposite direction. So in other
How
words,
about using liaison as a word rather than just provide referral services? Act as
I
liaison?
just think this is way too broad of a subject to condense it into one little thing. Hey, should they be referring people to things? Because we have to. That's the law. We have to provide them something. We can't leave them empty-handed.
Okay, so
How
do
about,
you think we should have a separate question about this at all, or should we just not include it?
I think if it's a separate question, depending on how it's worded, it could be helpful. But really, this is something that it's almost a matter of, so if the majority of people say, oh, I don't like it, well, that's likely because you've never been on the receiving end of needing it.
But
So I think that it can be very easily misunderstood by somebody who has not ever needed us for this and doesn't understand that these types of things can take us to sit with people for a great deal amount of time listening before we figure out exactly what service they need. And we can't just walk away. We have a duty to act and to provide. And if we walk away from someone without providing referrals or acting as a liaison, so I almost feel like it's you know, if somebody says, oh, I don't think that's super necessary.
How about this? Because keep in mind that regardless of the reason why you're doing a survey, one of the functions of the survey is education of the people taking the
So
survey.
could the question be, were you aware that the Shutesbury Police
Exactly.
Department
That's what I was.
offers services for referral services for those in need?
Yes, we could do it that way.
a separate question then?
Yeah, I think a
Yeah.
separate question.
Is it important to know if the survey taker has used the police services or has not used Shutesbury?
Oh,
Police
that's,
Services?
I think that's a great.
One of
point.
the questions we should ask, because the data that comes back
Mhm.
would be important on how that question is asked. Have you utilized services from the Shutesbury Police Department? Have you not utilized?
In
services?
any capacity. I
Yeah,
think that's
okay.
a great point.
So
We
that,
can't ask
that may,
what, but
that maybe should be the very first question.
it may be, because I think that that might inform, because depending on the answers that come back, those who have not used will have maybe very different numbers for those things. Those that have would have very, so it would be able
If we
to,
have, if we get enough responses, then we can analyze them separately.
those who have this, those who have not.
And- And then just, there are oftentimes people out of state that are in Shutesbury that also need referrals within the state, even though they potentially have addresses out of the state in the moment, they might need crisis services right now. So it goes beyond just Massachusetts residents. It goes, it's
Whoever's
just
in town
to
at the time.
anyone.
I do see, I'm gonna call for this point, for right now, I'm gonna call this my committee members. Mike,
Yeah, so, as I'm looking at this question, I'm trying to determine the importance of different aspects of what the police do in Shutesbury. And, I was kind of looking at that as, so what would what situation would I be in if I was going to dial 911? And, that's, I guess that falls under, response to emergency calls, and everything. But then there's other things that I would be interested in having the police involved in or assisting me with. And they're very specific. I just, this list that we have right now is very general. And I think it needs to be, a little bit more well-defined. And I have things like, doing a welfare check on somebody, or checking out someone who's on vacation, checking their house while they're gone. The dog and animal issues, noise issues, illegal dumping, scams and fraud, property theft reports. Those are the kind of things that I would expect the police to handle or assist me with. But I don't, that doesn't really come into the any of the categories of those items that we have listed so far.
Okay, Mike, would you send a list to me of what you think needs to be added?
Sure, I'll do that.
Thank you.
I think it's just, the public.
oh, I'm sorry, Kate and Rachel.
Yeah, my issue was very similar to Michael's, like including mental health and wellness checks, the domestic abuse incidents. I don't see any intervention on that, just specifying this list and fleshing it out. Substance use or ODs, trespassing, noise, and then any preventative policy making, or like relationship building, moving beyond just preventative policing, outreach efforts that the sheriff might make to build relationships or make our community more inclusive or things of that nature. So I just think that list could be more greatly detailed, which Michael started to speak to. So, and I'm sure Kristen and others in the department, that may be provided, are there other services you provide typically that aren't on this list? It'd be great to hear and include those. Thank you.
I just want to respond to that. Those things, most of those things that both of you have mentioned are things that police do. And I think everybody knows that that's what police do. the thoughts here with this was to make it more general so that people are thinking more about what the philosophy of the policing presence is in the town, as opposed to just responding to calls for help with animals or something like that. I mean, we can certainly make this a very long list that is very specific. I'm not sure that that would give us any useful information.
I do like Kate's point to building relationships with the town. That speaks to our community policing model. And I really like how she worded, that, building relationships, creating a more inclusive atmosphere. I do really like that. I think it kind of helps, people understanding a little bit of what our community policing model does. And that's at least one option to add to speak to the community policing. That we-
That's on 5.
So you think
It's on 5, yeah.
something,
Here's
We
5.
do speak to the community policing model in there, but one huge thing we do, it's a great point, we build relationships daily. So
you think it should be here in question
I-
number 1, 2?
I don't know where it should be, I just really like it. So,
Now, there's nothing wrong with asking very similar things in 2 different questions, because what that does is to validate your survey if you
Right.
get consistent results.
okay, so I like that maybe we could put it there and continuation in
Okay,
maybe
so-
different
so
wording
just-
in 5.
Just in 1, I mean, we can leave, 5 is fairly specific.
It is.
And in 1, we could just put in building relationships.
So where you said preventative patrol, I think it wasn't clear enough. I'm thinking it really is building relationships could be in that part. And then under
Oh,
5
I think that preventive
is not the
Preventive
same.
patrol is something different than building
Okay.
relations.
Yeah, Mike touched that. I think it's the running by someone's house and verification.
Yeah, that kind of.
Which does build relationships.
It does.
All of this builds relationships,
Yeah.
but I really liked, I think that, I really liked the wording and I like the, creating a more inclusive environment. I think that's super important and it speaks to our goals in the department itself, so.
Okay.
However, if that's just something we could think about maybe.
Right. Shall we move on?
Okay.
Oh, Rachel had a question. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Hold on,
sorry.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Go.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank the subcommittee for working on this. This is I told you last time, a huge amount of work creating a survey, and having created many of them in my many years as a school counselor, I can tell you that it takes weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of hard work to wordsmith it, to make sure that it's as not biased as possible and not leading as possible. I have a couple of quick things. The first one is question 1, the way it's worded. Below is a list of services that may be provided by local police departments. We're sitting here having a discussion about the services that our present Shutesbury Police Department already provides. I wonder if the committee is willing to revise the way that question is worded. For example, below is a list of services that our Shutesbury Police Department provides. I just wonder if that needs to be talked about, since we are sitting here creating a checklist. And I agree with a lot of the things that Kate McConnell just said, because we talked about this last week. A big part of creating surveys, and this was true in my work as a school counselor, is education. We're educating the town residents of Shutesbury as to what our present Shutesbury Police Department does. So I think it makes sense, if we're thinking about a checklist, it's critical that we put down as many of things as possible as our police department already does. I'm a little nervous about rank ordering them. I just wonder if it could just be a checklist where, I know on SurveyMonkey and other surveys that I've created, you can just check off. These are the things that I feel are important that my
Not ranked,
Shutesbury Police
right?
Department is already doing.
Yeah.
They're not ranked. What it does is allow everybody
To go one to
to indicate what they think are the more important or the less important.
Oh, I see
things.
what you're saying. Okay.
For them.
I see what you're saying. Okay. So anyway, that was just, those are my thoughts as I encourage the committee to think about changing, the subcommittee to think about changing the way that question's worded. Question 1 itself. And then we've been talking a lot about all the amazing things that our police department already does. And anyway, so I just feel that education is a critical piece of creating surveys. So thank you so much.
I agree with you entirely on that. However, it's also my experience that if you put a long list of things on a survey for people to rank their response to each one, they either get tired and don't do them all, or they put the same number in for everything.
Yeah, no, I hear you. The only other thing, I hear you, and I understand, and I agree with that. I just think I think that there should be a couple of more, there are some really critical things that our police department already
Yes.
does.
Yes,
So I just wonder if,
we've already come up with several things to add, so.
Right.
And I certainly did not think that this was inclusive, this list.
right. So the only other thing that I wanted to suggest, and again, thank you for all of your work on this, because as I said, it's a huge amount of work. I agree with what Kristen, Acting Police Chief Kristen said, the provision of referrals. My suggestion would be that maybe the wording could also be changed to, instead of social services, that's kind of upsetting to families who may have had DCF involvement. And I'll tell you that as a school counselor and a school social worker. So, I would use community resources, maybe providing referrals to community resources. So that's just an offering that I have for that one listing. Thank you so much for your.
I think
Let
it can
me
be.
comment. I just wanted to comment too on this question. We took a lot of time deciding what we were really wanting to ask. This isn't any kind of question about whether or not the police department should provide these services in the respondent's opinion. We're just asking, how important are these things to you personally? So we're not asking people to say what they think their neighbors need, or what they think the town should have necessarily, because they may not have given this very much thought. But what they do know is what's important to them. And so that's where we wanted to focus.
And I think going back to that first question of have you utilized or have you not utilized services is where we'll be able to differentiate a little bit
I
more.
would put these responses in more context.
Yes, more context, exactly. All right.
I'm so sorry, may I just say one more thing? This is just Rachel, I just wanted to say one more thing about that. I understand that you want to add a question about that, but if there's a way to make on your survey questions optional. I know when I created surveys in my school district, there was a way to create questions that kids had to answer or parents had to answer, but there was also a way to create optional questions. Because I worry that some people who may have used police services may see that question and flee the survey completely. And that was all I wanted to say. I apologize. Thank you so much.
It's on the other one.
Yeah, we could add prefer not to say. And it could be optional, but I think it's a general enough question that if you've utilized it for, a fraud call, or if you've utilized it for something more emergency, you're not asking what it was, you're just simply asking, have you or have you not? And this isn't going to be tracked by person. We're not going to pull that information. It's going to be anonymous. So we won't know who they are, just only that they have or have not. I think it's a general enough question. And if we prefer not,
Right.
there's that option too. I think it's general enough. Yeah. Going to number 2.
Yeah, we didn't change number 2. Everybody seemed to think it was fine.
Yeah, right. And we just need to scroll. I don't remember who has it on their screen.
Sorry, I think I did.
Oh, I could check that. Okay.
I thought we added emergency calls, which I think is perfect that we added that.
Yeah, emergency.
Perfect.
I don't remember what discussion this came out of now, but for
Number
some
3.
reason, it must have been in my notes. I don't, maybe I do my notes with me.
For number 3,
Yeah, for number 3.
I think people might be able to just accept it or not, or argue about it.
Oh, sure, would they?
I see, Mike, and I also have a thought while we're thinking about this. Would this be a better question for agree, disagree, or neutral, instead of yes, no, or no opinion? Would it be something that's a little bit softer, or, and I'm just tossing that out there.
I always hate those agree,
Oh, okay.
do not agree, because it leaves too much. I mean.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Are we
this
gonna
is-
provide them what we already have for coverage? So I think,
Well, we did talk about this, and we talked about having a cover letter that.
that's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
Is it gonna be in the cover letter?
Yeah.
That we
Yes.
provide 7 AM to 11 PM,
Yes.
7 days a week, and it update you as 24/7?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, then that's,
Yeah, there will have to be some sort of
okay.
mission to go along with it. Mike, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just, I was wondering what were we trying to find out with this question? It's, you know, I read that and I'm wondering, so what, where are we trying to go with that?
I think we had a long discussion about this last week, because this question came out of what the consensus was of what we needed, the information we needed to get from the community. And one of those was first for the community to understand what kind of coverage they already have. And secondly, what the people in the community, whether they thought that was adequate.
How about number 3 could be the same scaling up as up above, 1 through 4?
No,
Yeah, it's more of a yes no question. I think it's.
it's a yes, no question. Yeah, I
I
mean,
agree or disagree, but I can pick up those words.
I mean,
So-
that's so wishy-washy.
So if I'm happy with the daily 7 to 11, so what do I answer? No to this question? Is that?
Well, maybe this is a question where we could have a spot for someone to make a comment.
Okay, I mean, there's a spot at the end for any comments, but we
yeah.
could add a comment place for comment here.
Maybe just, maybe someone prefers 2 AM instead of,
So I think it's moved way away from what the original question was on the last draft. And it just, again, I was confused as to what we're trying to find out with this question, because like I said, if I'm, I would know how to answer it if I'm happy with the 7 to 11, 7 days a week. So, I'd just throw that out.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
but we'd also
Previous
discussed,
one.
Mike, that we were gonna put kind of
Here's the previous
a
one.
note in a cover letter that explains what currently is being done.
I think adding a comment to speak to Mike's point, a comment area. So no, I think what we have is fine. If somebody wanted to say that, yeah, the comment area.
Instead of just saying comment, how about if we have another place for people to check and say other, and then a line?
Please specify, yeah, other please.
Does that make it better, Mike?
You say that again, please?
Instead of having a comment section on this, how about adding another place where they can check that says other, and then a line where they can write in the other?
Oh, yeah, that'd be good.
Okay.
Okay. Next question is. We have about 5 minutes. We're getting near our 7:30.
And you found a typo. I really tried very hard to not have typos. Okay.
We're all human. Do you think it's important for Shutesbury to have its own police chief and department? Yes, no, no opinion, prefer not say.
Mary Jo, remind me, I think this came out of, pretty directly out of some discussion last week, didn't it? This question.
Yeah, our last question was a lot more complicated. It gave all of the different kinds
No,
of,
it's number four.
yeah, right. The other question that this is replacing involved our having to refer people to a glossary and which explained what regionalization was, what shared chief was, and all of that. We kind of thought that it might be easier to just ask the kind of the big question that people might have a really strong feeling about, and leave the detailed, glossary definition conversation to the in-person study group and the select board to figure out.
It was the previous number 2.
Yes, so,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, no, go ahead.
So I just want to point out that we got rid of question number 1 and just reworded it, asking the same question and put it in 4. And I'm gonna also reiterate that the same thing that I wanted in 1, I would like in 4. And that is, do you think it is important for Shutesbury to continue to have its own police chief and department, or continue to have whatever? But really, it's the exact same question, just asked a little bit differently. And I, Mary Jo, I totally understand now that you were trying to be specific, so that makes more sense to me.
No, I like putting continue in there. That's good.
Okay.
Do we want to add a place for somebody to write something in here? I think there's not much else they could write, really.
There's comments down at the bottom.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one question, and this is because I've never created a survey before? Why on some questions do we have prefer not to say, but on other ones we don't have prefer not to say? They have to answer.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we can discuss this at another time, but the surveys, this is different than, like a case report form in a clinical study where you actually have to have all the answers.
Yeah.
In most surveys, you can just skip a question if you don't want to answer it. And that's what I would suggest. We do.
So for me though, no opinion is the same as prefer not to say.
No, not at all. Somebody who has no opinion is telling you specifically that they don't care what the answer is.
Okay, so I just think, okay. I just want it to be kind of consistent, because what do you consider acceptable police response time emergency calls? You have to choose, you have to choose, you have to choose, but there's no room for, I don't have an opinion there, or I prefer not to say there either. You know what I'm saying?
Well, we can make sure they're consistent in the final, we can figure out what we want.
So I didn't know if
We
there
can
was a
certainly add
survey
no
reason.
opinion. Well,
Could be no
it's
opinion.
true. Somebody might have no opinion about response time. It's unlikely, but it's true. They might not. They might have no opinion.
Okay.
The only reason why I didn't add it in there was because I included every possible time in the response time question, but we can add it certainly.
Mike, I see your hand up.
Yeah, on this question, I'm reading this, and if I didn't know what we've been talking about for the last couple of months, that there are other options other than our own police chief and department, then I would, of course, answer yes, because I would assume there's, it's a trick question and there's no other answer, because you've got to have
It's not
a
trick
police chief
question,
in the
Mike.
department. No, I'm saying if I did not
Mike,
have,
answer.
I'm still asking my question. Can I finish?
Go.
So I'm saying is that unless you know what the other options are, which people taking the survey are not going to know, then it's that it doesn't make sense, because you of course you're going to have to answer yes to this.
No, Mike, we're having a cover letter that will include talking about different models for policing.
There'll be some context in the letter that goes out with it, Mike. It's not just gonna be simply this survey.
All right, well, then I think we,
Could be prefer another option.
if it's gonna be in the cover letter, which I don't know what's gonna be in the cover letter, then, you know, once we see the cover letter, then we can discuss this more, but, I apologize. I have heard cover letter, you know, several times tonight, and you know, I don't know what's going in it, so, I have a hard time, understanding the concept that you guys are familiar with and everything, so I apologize for that.
Well, this was part of a good part of the discussion last week was to send us out with a cover letter so that people have context for these questions. And also as an educational tool.
Introduction.
What about number 4 saying also prefer other option? If the cover letter's listing things, then number 4 could say prefer other option.
That's a good idea.
Well, then we have to reword the question.
No, I don't think so. Not with the context on the cover letter.
But we do, because we're saying, do you think it is important for Shutesbury to continue having its own police? We would have to reword it to allow, to have,
Prefer other option with a blank next to it. Then that's like prefer not to
Parentheses,
say,
see cover letter.
prefer other option.
but that doesn't, that's not a response to that question. The response to that question is, yes, it's important, or no, it's not important.
Or no opinion, or prefer not to say, or prefer another option, blank. I think it could be there, but that's, you know, you guys are gonna wrestle with it. I'm not.
And if you did another option, parentheses, see cover letter.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's almost 7:30.
Oh, yep.
We're
How
on the
many
last
questions?
question.
Okay, let's do
Number
last
5,
question and
last
then-
question.
We'll have a couple minutes last question, and then we'll close out.
I was thinking in number 5, attend town events.
oh, yeah.
Get to know
There's
people's
lots of things.
names.
I
Yeah,
want
that's
people to just send us
right. Okay, we'll
a
send
list
it.
of the things to
Okay.
add there.
Yeah.
That's why I left a lot of empty spaces.
Okay, send in, I'll send them to you.
Oh, okay, we're gonna be sending,
Yeah,
all right, for
send
thoughts
us
and
the
ideas.
number.
And
Okay.
the general question is fine with me. I mean, the general
That's
organization.
what we need to know. Do you think this is the right way to ask this question?
Yes. I have a different question. My question is just on, it says small town community policing model. There are community policing models in large towns as well. Community policing is not only for rural communities. I
That's-
know that Mary Jo really focused on the origins that she researched at the last meeting, being rural communities, but you know, going to a lot of state events over the last decade or so, you know, seeing all the, you know, police departments reporting from larger cities and urban areas about community policing has been, you know, watching that shift in the last 2 decades, probably. I just wanted to scratch out the word small town.
I specifically put that in there because
Yeah.
small town community policing is different, quite different than large city community policing is.
There are so many aspects that are identical.
And and I'll speak for, let's talk about just, and I won't go on too much about this, but Springfield has a community policing model where they break it up into different units. There's a metro unit, community policing. They are for the metro, the downtown unit. Their job is different than the C3 community policing in the north end. So it's almost like they create their own little small town
Reduce it to
within the large
small.
city. So it's not really that different. I mean, it could be said the Shutesbury Police Department's community policing model. I don't know.
Well, it also harks back to the federal effort to start defining community policing as a goal, as a concept that gets applied
Yes.
And so one way people deal with it is to shrink the size of the unit they're dealing with, but it's still saying the guardian versus the warrior.
That's
That's the
right.
whole difference of community policing. So I think-
Absolutely. I mean,
So-
the philosophy behind it is the same. It's
Right.
just how it's applied. It's different in different places. But I'll take out small town if you don't want it. in there.
Thank you.
One of the reasons why the words small town for me were important is that it was kind of a revelation to me as someone who has lived in larger cities most of my life, that community policing has always been the predominant model of policing for small towns. And so when I first came into this conversation, I thought that community policing was something that Shutesbury decided on sort of specifically, which I know that Shutesbury has. But I think that it's important for people to know that community policing is just the way of doing business in small towns by police departments for the most part. And I mean, Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong, or if anybody else has a different impression, but that's the impression that I got. It's not some sort of radical new thing that's being proposed, you know, because of Black Lives Matter or because of, you know, the way that we feel as Shutesbury specifically. It's just that when police operate in small towns, they have the opportunity to get close to people, to create relationships. It's different from bigger city policing, where there is much more of a focus on crime and criminals.
I think we could brainstorm a little bit more and send our ideas in.
That's good
And
idea.
Mary Jo, I really think that have been very strong efforts to bring that smaller locale, smaller town feeling
To the
to
larger
urban areas over the last, 15 years or so, or 20 years. So that's why I'm not agreeing with that.
Yeah, but and I don't disagree with what you're saying at all. I think that that's the way that I was introduced to community policing, was hearing about it in Boston. So, yeah.
I know we have to stop. I would just like to bring up the issue that we have no budget whatsoever. So we can't send this out with a cover letter. All we can do is make it available on the web. And I don't know, we're going to have to
Request a select board funding.
Yeah, we can figure it out.
Yeah, it's not.
because it would be way better if we could send one of these to every household. That would be a much better way to do it.
Yeah, I think people are concerned about duplicate answers. Some people, if we do it electronically, so
Right.
we'll look for some money.
Okay.
And when we schedule these meetings, can we not do Mondays? I have I'm flexible to do it, but I don't want it to be the default day unless.
No,
we
I think
have
our
to be.
default day was still Thursday, but we were trying to fit so many in. 'cause
Okay.
We had missed some.
But then I
This is
saw
not-
one scheduled for the 29th, which I believe is
As a Monday.
Yes.
a Monday.
That was
Well, that was
Do we
because
have to do
Thursday
that?
is, well, Thanksgiving is a Thursday.
Do we have, yeah.
So we shifted it. I also have a slight request if we could start just a few minutes later. so
Yeah, I think that's
Some of
appropriate.
us that need to travel.
Why don't we
from
do
it.
5:45?
Does that work for everybody?
I only suggested 5:30
No, no,
early
that's
on
fine.
because it was going to be outside.
Yeah,
and-
5:45 and.
And all of our other meetings have been 5:30 through
I don't
select
wanna-
board.
And
Calendar.
hopefully you won't have the stress of setting up everything. When you get.
No, it's just the drive, really.
Yeah. Right.
Oh,
You can start
I
on
think
time.
we need to stay on.
Rita?
You're muted.
Sorry. What do you need from me? Sorry, I was distracted by something in the other room.
Okay, we thought you were talking to us. Never mind, never mind.
Will we be going back to bi-weekly as well?
Yeah, after the
two
next
meetings a
one.
month?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go back to our.
So when's the next meeting?
The
29th.
29th.
29.
Last
Okay,
day,
you're right.
yeah. I also work a second
I'm
job on
with you
Mondays,
on
so I
that.
feel your pain.
Okay.
And
Final,
at
that's the
5,
last one.
does anyone have a problem if we change it to 5:45 to allow anyone who's working to get where they need to go?
Sounds good.
Good. Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Hey, I got a question. What are we doing for meetings in December? I mean, we're,
why don't we schedule those with the next one?
But our default is the second and fourth,
Thursday.
second and fourth Thursdays. But the fourth Thursday is going to interfere with Christmas, is that true?
No, it'll be
23rd?
the 9th and the 23rd in December.
Oh, that one might, we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for whoever has. planned. So, okay, did I
So are we
hear?
going with the 9th?
Yeah, we'll go with the 9th on, the 9th,
For December?
and
Okay.
then we'll figure out the next one after. Just kind of.
Whether it should be a few days before that or sometime between Christmas and New Year's.
Motion to adjourn, should I,
So moved.
okay, second, someone,
Second,
Okay,
okay? All in favor, and I'll have to go through roll call, so Mike,
Pinsky, aye.
moving, Rita,
Carol, I.
Mary Jo,
Johnson, I.
Cheryl,
Hayden, aye.
Susie.
Mosher, aye.
Burgess, aye.
Make peace with me at last. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
See ya.
Guess we'll be sending